Hello, my name is Dave Leitner with GlowShift Performance Gauges. I have about 16 years of auto body and custom experience, and I'm here to show you how to install the GlowShift Universal Gauge Pod to any year, make, and model vehicle pillar. So here we have our GlowShift Universal triple pod, and we are going to take our pillar out of our vehicle and just examine how it fits. See if the shape is close in any of the corners to see a good starting position. As you can see, it does have some gaps that we are going to need to work on, especially on this side. So what we'll do, by the time we're finished, ready to mount this, all this should fit pretty snug around all of your edges and have a nice fit and make it look like this universal pod came directly for your vehicle. So now that we have found what we think is a good starting spot for our shaping, I'm gonna pick this corner and work that with some heat and start to shape that contour, and then we'll fasten this corner, come along and do the same for the top. Just a reminder to use caution with the heat gun. The hot plastic will get extremely hot, but you will need to work that plastic with the heat in order to get it to take shape. So just be careful that you don't burn yourself. We're gonna start with this bottom corner and get some heat. I'm gonna try to get situated here. Just to start to reshape this corner. You will notice that if you get too much heat on the plastic, that it will shrink. So you have to be careful you do not use too much heat. If you do get the plastic to shrink and kind of go out of shape, at the very end we'll show you how to square it back off. You'll notice that I'm heating it some and then setting it back on the pillar to kind of help that contour. So now that we have this corner where we need it to be, we're going to start on the next corner. And with that, there's a little bit of a lip here to make this fit, any different application. In this particular application, we are going to sand that lip off with a Dremel. So make sure you have your safety glasses on and double check the right side. And we will run the Dremel along this edge. It's always better just to take a little off and check, and then take a little more off, just so you don't remove too much material. Take a little bit more off this corner. As you can see, with just a little bit of dremeling, we're getting a really nice tight fit right there. So now that we have the contour fairly close on this bottom corner, I'm going to drill a pilot hole in the universal pod into the pillar to kind of set that corner and help us position the rest of the pod and get it to conform with the pillar. Take our supplied screws, and it looks like we'll be ready to put our second screw in this corner. Okay, now we have our two set screws in on that inner edge. As you can see, that really with just a little bit of heat has everything lining up really nicely. And if you remember the gaps that this universal pod had when we started, you know, it's starting to shape up nicely, pretty quickly. Okay. So now we'll apply some more heat. Sometimes you can also use a wet sponge to help cool the plastic down quicker to set it exactly where you need it to be. Okay, now we have that side of the universal pod looking pretty much the same contour that it needs to be. We are going to set the screws along the windshield edge. Need to make sure that you don't put the screws too close to the edge, because we will be straightening out the plastic where it has shrank a little bit from using the heat. We're looking really nice there. Don't worry about how it's not straight along that edge. At the very end, we'll go back and shape that up nice and straight so it looks, you know, like you bought it for this vehicle. Okay, so the next step would be our final corner. We do have a little bit of a bigger gap down here and it's not sitting flat. So what we are going to do is remove our 3 screws, trim some of this plastic lip off this corner and try to get it to lay a little tighter before we use heat to fasten that corner. Now that we have the edges trimmed how we would like, I'm going to reinstall the 3 screws that we had already placed. Okay, we are now ready to drill our final pilot hole here to put the last screw in. We have a nice tight seam right here. So now that we have all 4 corners set in place, it's really just a little bit of fine tuning to make this fit exactly how we want it to. Looking over everything, a couple little detailed spots that I think we have to go, and we're ready to install this in our car. So another thing to be careful about when you're heating this up is where we dremeled the plastic thinner to make it fit tighter, compared to the thicker plastic in this area, it will want to shrink in that area more. So you really have to keep your heat in the direct location you're looking to set the contour. So now that we have the shape exactly how we want it to fit the contour of your vehicle's pillar, we're going to take out all of our screws and square off all the edges. For this process, I'm going to use a 3-inch sander with an 80 grit sandpaper on it. Just going to hold it flat on the edge. All we're doing here is just straightening up any edges that might have shrunk a little bit on us. Now that we have all of our edges squared off, it's time to reattach our GlowShift Universal pod to our pillar. Once we have all of our attachment screws in place, we'll take the button head caps to hide our fasteners. One of the last things you would have to do before you install your GlowShift gauges is drill out a hole for your wiring for each gauge. You want to make sure that it's positioned, inside the pocket so you don't come through the outside of our universal pod. I did position the holes back towards the pocket, a little more towards the back, just so that the wiring does come off the back side of the gauge. So now that our universal pod is fitting the contour of our pillar, it's time to install our GlowShift gauges. For more videos on gauge installs, please check out our website.